Đây là bản chuyển thể tiểu thuyết hoàn chỉnh, nối liền mạch từ đầu đến cuối dựa trên nội dung kịch bản bạn cung cấp.
The quiet coastal town seemed to breathe a little easier once the weekend sun began to set, casting warm golden hues across the gentle ocean waves. Todd Ballinger drove his car along the winding road with a sense of triumph he could barely contain. Sitting in the passenger seat beside him was Lisa, her hands neatly folded in her lap, her eyes reflecting a subtle mix of affection and anxiety. Todd glanced over at her, his smile broad and infectious as he broke the gentle silence inside the vehicle. He told her that he could not believe they had finally pulled it off, securing the whole weekend entirely to themselves. Lisa turned her gaze toward him, a faint trace of hesitation lingering in her tone. She asked him how he had managed to work that out with his mother. Todd chuckled softly, shaking his head as if enjoying a private joke. He confessed that he did not have to work out anything at all because his mother had flown up to Sacramento that very morning. Leaning in slightly, he offered to let her in on a little secret. He revealed that his mother was getting an appointment to the bench. Lisa looked at him with genuine surprise, repeating the word judge in disbelief, and asking if anyone could beat such news, a mother becoming a judge. Yet, despite the grand announcement, the light in Lisa's eyes dimmed slightly. She shifted in her seat, looking away toward the passing scenery. She admitted to Todd that she felt she should not be there with him like that. Todd brushed her concern aside with a light laugh, teasingly attributing her hesitation to small-town thinking again. Lisa gave a small, solemn nod, accepting that she was indeed just a small-town girl who could not help how she felt. She explained that the weight of all the lying was getting to her. She reminded him of what happened at the country club that morning, where she had to tell them she was sick, forcing them to find another girl to serve at the party. Todd reached over to comfort her, assuring her that it was no big deal anyway, and adding that she was far too special to be a waitress. Lisa remained uneasy, bringing up the thought of Harold. She wondered aloud what would happen if Harold called her from Tucson and how she could possibly explain being out of the apartment for the entire weekend. Todd advised her to simply tell him that the phone was out of order, though Lisa remained doubtful. Todd reminded her of her own words, noting that Harold never called when he was away on business. Lisa agreed, speculating that perhaps Harold had something going on inside himself, though she quickly retracted the thought, stating that Harold was not like that and recalling how he had said when he married her that it was for life. Todd observed her closely, asking if she was feeling sorry for Harold. Lisa confessed that she did not know, admitting that maybe she was. Todd looked at her with deep seriousness, telling her that if he did not love her so much, he never would have allowed any of this to start, though he believed it was the best thing that had ever happened to either of them. Lisa softly agreed, acknowledging that she knew it was true. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from the dark shadows nearby. Lisa gasped, asking what that was. Todd paused, listening intently, and suggested it might just be the wind since it came from over by the trees. Lisa asked if he would check it out, and Todd agreed, stepping out to investigate. Before he could take more than a few steps, a harsh voice cut through the darkness. Harold Murphy stepped into the light, his face twisted in betrayal and rage. Lisa recoiled in horror, stammering his name in disbelief. She pleaded with Harold, trying to tell him that it was not what he thought, but Harold cut her off with venom, calling her a liar and a tramp. Todd immediately tried to intervene, telling Murphy to take it easy and cool down for a minute. Harold turned his anger toward Todd, shouting at him to shut up and declaring that he would take care of Todd after he finished her. As Harold lunged forward, the tension reached a breaking point. A shot echoed through the night. Harold froze, staggered backward, and collapsed onto the ground, motionless. Silence descended upon the scene, heavy and suffocating. Lisa stared in utter horror, the weapon trembling in her hands as she gasped that she had not meant to shoot him. Todd rushed to her side, repeating that he knew, urging her to go call an ambulance. He knelt beside Harold, checking for a pulse, only to find none. He quietly declared that Harold was dead. Lisa covered her face, overwhelmed by panic, crying out to God and admitting she felt sick. Todd quickly poured a drink from a nearby flask and handed it to her, telling her to drink it. Lisa took a sip, her voice trembling as she confessed that she was not sorry, asking if that was an awful thing to say. Todd took charge, stating that he better call the police. However, Lisa caught his arm, asking if they shouldn't talk to someone first. Todd hesitated, reminding her that he was a lawyer and they needed professional guidance. Lisa looked at him desperately and brought up his mother. The mention of his mother struck a deep chord in Todd. Lisa asked if he realized what a scandal like this would do to her chances for the judicial appointment. Todd argued that it was an accident and self-defense, believing his mother would understand. Lisa agreed that his mother would understand, but urged him to think about her career. Todd looked at the body, torn, admitting he could not do this to his mother, yet acknowledging they were in a lot of trouble and needed to tell someone. Lisa fiercely insisted that they did not need to call anyone, asking him if he loved her and trusted her. Todd looked into her eyes and reluctantly agreed. Just as they were deciding what to do, footsteps approached. Someone was coming. A voice called out, asking if that was Ernest. Todd quickly stepped forward to intercept the man, who turned out to be Mr. Bollinger's acquaintance, Andy. Andy asked if anything was wrong, and Todd smoothly lied, explaining that a friend of his had just had a little too much to drink. Andy offered to help, but Todd declined, saying they would just get him to walk it off. Andy wished Mr. Ballinger a good night and went on his way. Once the coast was clear, Todd and Lisa moved quickly. They realized they needed a heavy weight to dispose of the body in the ocean, and Todd retrieved a heavy chain and an old trunk from the boathouse, making sure to secure everything before heading out to sea under the cover of night. Meanwhile, private investigator Barnaby Jones was hard at work on an entirely different angle of the same man's life. Sitting in his office, Barnaby reviewed the information he had gathered regarding Harold Murphy, who had previously gone by the name Harold Burke. He met with his client, Evelyn, to update her on the progress. Barnaby explained that when he tracked Harold down through his social security number, he discovered he had taken a position with a real estate firm under another name, Harold Murphy, to make it harder to find him. However, Barnaby revealed that the pretty young waitress Evelyn thought Harold had run away with was still around, and Harold had actually married her. Evelyn was stunned, declaring that it could not be possible because they were not divorced. Barnaby mentioned that he had asked his associate to call Harold's office that morning, and the lady who answered suggested calling his apartment to talk to his wife. Evelyn felt a surge of betrayal, realizing the man she lived with and had a child with had abandoned them. She angrily told Barnaby that she wanted him in jail for what he had done to her. Barnaby gently intervened, asking about her daughter, Betsy, and questioning whether it would do her daughter any good to have her father behind bars. Evelyn paused, realizing the truth in his words, and conceded that she did not truly want revenge, but rather a divorce and sufficient child support so Betsy could have proper advantages. Barnaby agreed that it was the best way to handle the situation. Later that day, Andy Lucker was lingering around the local property when Todd Ballinger walked up. Todd claimed to be looking for a screwdriver, but Andy brought up an old trunk that had been sitting in the shed, noting it contained an old rusting anchor chain he had hoped to sell for scrap. Andy mentioned that he saw the trunk before going home for dinner, but when he returned later during his walk, it was gone. Andy casually remarked that he saw Todd driving away late at night with a young lady. Todd realized Andy had seen him and quickly fabricated a story, claiming he was just throwing out old odds and ends and used the trunk to junk them, offering to pay Andy for the scrap chain. Andy declined the money for the chain, but subtly pointed out that he could do various repairs around the property for a reasonable price, reminding Todd that inflation was rising and prices were going up and up. Shortly after, Barnaby Jones arrived at the real estate office where Harold Murphy used to work, inquiring about his whereabouts. He met Frank Delbert, who was busy pitching the benefits of the Sunshine Retirement Village. Frank expressed his deep frustration with Murphy, explaining that Murphy had just thrown away a $1,600 commission after working on it for weeks, and then suddenly quit right before a big deal in Tucson. Frank gave Barnaby Harold's home address at the Graybriar Apartments on Franklin Boulevard. Armed with the address, Barnaby visited the apartment, where he encountered Lisa carrying grocery bags. Barnaby introduced himself as a private investigator looking for Mr. Murphy. Lisa appeared nervous, claiming her husband was out of town on business in Tucson. When Barnaby noted that the real estate office said he had quit and was not in Tucson, Lisa quickly corrected herself, claiming it was Phoenix instead. Barnaby then presented a photograph of Harold Burke, explaining that his client was Mrs. Harris, who was seeking child support for their child. Lisa was shocked to learn that Harold was already married and had a child, realizing her own marriage to him in Reno might be completely invalid. Back at his mother's home, Todd was greeted by his mother, Rose Ballinger. Rose warmly welcomed her son, announcing that the governor was officially announcing her appointment to the judicial bench the following Thursday. Todd expressed immense pride in her achievement. However, Rose questioned him about a large sum of money, $25,000, that he had recently withdrawn from their joint account. Todd assured her that everything was fine and that he would handle it. Moments later, Todd received an anonymous phone call. A harsh voice on the line revealed that he had seen Todd and Lisa on the pier the previous night, dumping a trunk into the ocean. The caller demanded $25,000 in exchange for his silence, instructing Todd to meet by a phone booth at a specific gas station at 9 o'clock that evening. Todd met Lisa shortly after, panic setting in as he informed her that someone knew what they had done. Lisa realized their situation was worsening rapidly. Todd gathered the money and followed the blackmailer's instructions, heading to the designated alley behind the gas station and tossing the bag of money over a high wall as directed. On the other side of the wall, the blackmailer retrieved the cash. It was revealed that the blackmailer was working alongside Harold Murphy himself, who was very much alive. Harold had faked his own death using blank cartridges during the confrontation at the cabin, working in secret with his accomplice to extort money from Todd. However, when Harold learned from his accomplice that a private investigator named Barnaby Jones was asking questions about him, he realized the net was tightening. Barnaby Jones, continuing his investigation, pieced together several anomalies. He discovered that there was no record of Harold Murphy taking a flight to Tucson or Phoenix, nor any record of Lisa taking a cab to the airport. Suspecting foul play or a complex scam, Barnaby consulted with the authorities and continued questioning local witnesses around the pier, including Andy Lucker. Tension mounted as the blackmailer called Todd once again, demanding an additional $50,000. Todd, pushed to his absolute limit, decided he would not be bled dry forever. He drove out to the designated exchange location in a remote canyon, bringing a gun instead of the money, intent on ending the blackmail once and for all. Lisa, who had followed him, intervened just in time, stopping Todd from committing a fatal mistake and convincing him to leave the area. In the aftermath of the failed confrontation, Todd and Lisa discussed their desperate circumstances. Todd suggested that they could get married once everything settled, but Lisa hesitated. When Todd pressed her, Lisa confessed that her marriage to Harold was never legal in the first place because Harold was already married when she met him. Meanwhile, Barnaby Jones met with Rose Ballinger to inform her of his suspicions regarding her son. He explained that Todd appeared to be the target of an extortion scheme involving Lisa and Harold, revealing that Harold had a background as a circus escape artist named Marco, who specialized in escaping from locked trunks. This crucial detail explained how Harold could have survived being locked inside the trunk dumped into the ocean. Realizing the truth, Todd confronted Lisa at her hiding place. He demanded to know how Harold could have escaped the trunk. Lisa, realizing the game was up, attempted to manipulate Todd once more, claiming she had been forced to go along with Harold's plan under threat of death. She claimed she had turned on Harold and killed him for real this time, offering to take Todd to the forest where his body was hidden. Before they could leave, Barnaby Jones and the police stepped out from the shadows, having coordinated with Todd and his mother to expose the truth. Lisa pulled a gun, threatening to shoot, but Barnaby remained calm, reasoning with her until she finally lowered the weapon and surrendered to the officers. A few days later, the truth was fully unraveled. Harold Murphy's body was indeed recovered where Lisa had indicated, as a real betrayal had occurred between the conspirators when their scheme fell apart. Todd sat with Barnaby Jones and his mother, Rose, reflecting on the painful ordeal. Todd admitted feeling like the ultimate fool, though he recognized it would take time to move past the experience. Barnaby offered words of wisdom, reminding him that love is a powerful force, and as his frequently married uncle used to say, a few sour grapes do not spoil the entire wine. Rose Ballinger smiled warmly at Barnaby, thanking him for his invaluable assistance as she prepared to step into her new role as a judge, knowing that justice had ultimately prevailed.